we're drifting into Chelsea territory a bit here, aren't we? And Mason Mount's move to Man United has been confirmed now. Is it 50 million, 55 million?
55 plus 5, yeah.
Quite a good price these days for, my opinion, a very, very good player, young player with still a lot of potential. If I was a Chelsea fan, I'd be wondering, who's going to be in our midfield? They've got Enzo and Conor Gallagher.
I mean, you've lost Kante, Kovacic, Mount. Those are
three really
big
top
players.
Players. Yeah.
I mean, I find it difficult to spin the Mount deal as being a good deal for Chelsea. I know a lot of people say the fees is a good deal, but for me, selling him to Manchester United, one of their own, as a lot of fans go on about, Player of the Year multiple occasions, serial England international, and you touched on it a bit before, but he's someone who seems to come in for criticism, particularly on social media. But every coach plays Mason Mount. They all pick him. They all play him. And I would be absolutely stunned if Mauricio Pochettino didn't want to play Mason Mount.
He's a coach's player, isn't he? And I think Nizar made this point when they were talking to Declan Rice on England duty. He said Mount is a clever player. He's smart. He knows when to drop back. He knows when to attack. And coaches like that tactical intelligence. They want players like that in their team. And of course he can assist, he can score. And he's going to be a big asset for United and a big miss for Chelsea. But as you were saying, and we touched on earlier, there seems to be a disconnect with what fans in the stadium think, because they voted him Player of the Year 2 years running and they used to love him, and what fans on social media think. He used to get lots of abuse. And even now, there's United fans we're seeing on our channels, not that impressed with him. A lot of people seem to think, is he that good? And yet, the match-going fans, the players, the fans who watch those players on a regular basis rate Mason Mount. And do you think that's? I mean, your experience with Arsenal, this disconnect. Wenger had it maybe, and Arteta to some extent. The fans in the stadium tend to be much more loyal than the ones online, don't they?
Yeah, I think there's certainly the match-going fan with managers and players turn a lot slower than they do on social media, and even with with Xhaka, when he was getting back into the team, I think within the stadium, fans were quite supportive of him. And when they turned on him, that's why it was all the more credible to have that. But I think Ramsdale was another good example where I remember when he joined, he spoke about he disabled the comments on his social media because he had so much abuse. And that first game, I remember going to West Brom away in the Carabao Cup, and the fans there were all singing his name in the away end. And he sort of realised once he was on the pitch, he was like, actually, it's completely different, the reception I'm getting with these fans. And managers are the same. I think managers will get a lot longer rope from fans who go every week, who pay the money. And that was a big thing for Arteta, I think, who had fans in the stadium, stayed with him for a long time. And there was also a point when it was a COVID era that it was probably just as well there weren't any fans, because I remember we were going there at 7 o'clock every Sunday, it felt, and it was Arsenal losing, and it was a new record. But there is a tolerance from match-going fans, and why that is, you would argue it should be less because they're paying the money every week. But maybe they've just been in, seen it so much that they appreciate things take time.
I think if you're prepared to pay a lot of money, and it is always a lot of money in the Premier League now, to go to see your team, you're committed, you want to see your team win, and you know that by supporting your team, you're giving them much more of a chance of winning. If you're sitting at home, watching it on a stream, watching it on TV or Twitter, you're much more likely just to sort of fire off a comment. You haven't got 20, 30, 40, 50,000 people around you all saying, getting behind the team. You'll be that lone voice of saying, Arteta out. I mean, as you said, when Wenger got to the latter stages of his time at Arsenal, there were Wenger out protests, mainly outside the ground, and sometimes they're abandoned because only 3 people turned up. But going to the papers and going to social media, there was just thousands of voices. And you go into our comments on Hayters TV and the press conferences too. A lot of people turned on him. And still we get a few for Mikel Arteta, even after the last 2 seasons. After
the cone layer.
Cup.
There's one guy always calls him the cone layer. You know who you are. You know who you are.
So Chelsea fans will be demanding trophies, won't they? They won't. Top 4 won't be enough. It might be next season.
So I think it would be very demanding to expect that Chelsea side that. Blimey, I was just looking through my reports last season, and from Christmas onwards, it was defeat at home to, Everton or Southampton, Everton. There were some really terrible results they got. So you'd expect them to be better, but to be winning a trophy or really pushing for the title in his first year, I think that's a push, don't you?
Yeah, when you look where they were a bottom half team, weren't they? They were really, really struggling, and I think for them it's just about. I mean, even to make the Champions League, I think would be a brilliant season. I think it's just about getting nearer the top of the table. I looked at it's different to Arsenal because obviously Chelsea have almost put themselves in this situation with the money they spent under Bowley, but the size of the rebuild feels sort of comparable to Arsenal for me, and Arsenal took 2-3 years getting that Champions League under Arteta. And for me, if it takes them 2 seasons to get the Champions League, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
Simply because the teams above them, have not got worse. Teams like Brighton, who are pushing forward, Villa spending good money, got good coaches. So it's going to be a really difficult job for Pochettino, and I think there will need to be some patience from the Chelsea fans for that. And I think the way Pochettino is speaking, I think will build that connection. That for me with Potter, there was never that bond with the Chelsea fans. They never connected with that. And Pochettino did that very well at Spurs. It was a big thing for him. If he can do the same at Chelsea, it will help him.
And the players, that's another thing, isn't it? Because you also felt Potter never really had the players fully on board. And Pochettino, one of his great strengths at Spurs was he got that group like a family, the whole coaching staff. He's already done it at Chelsea, hasn't he? He's had a barbecue for the staff, so he fosters that family spirit, and we're all in it together. Big sort of hug, a big arm around the shoulders of everyone. And that's important, get the players on board, because there was a lot of discontent, wasn't there, at Chelsea? There has been for a couple of years, really. And I think you feel that there's something in the psyche at Chelsea that if they don't like the manager, they can actually get rid of him. They've done it year after year after, even Mourinho and Conte and Sarri. The players sort of down tools a little bit. Tuchel was maybe different, but that was the board rather than the players. But you sort of get the feeling that players feel, whether it's good or bad, that they've got the ability to see off a manager if they don't really fancy him. So it's really important to get the players on board.
There's someone who calls himself Football Interviews. Maybe you could get a job with us here. Or write in and let us know if you want to do some work with Hayters TV. He says, might be he, might be she, is £60 million a reasonable price for Mount? And is he a good signing overall?
I think in terms of 1 year on contract, it's probably a reasonable fee. As we said, I think it's difficult for Chelsea to spin it losing, a player like that. I think it's a really good signing for Man United, particularly for the way Ten Hag likes to play. You can see him fitting in that system, maybe ahead of Eriksen, or he can play out on the left. He can play as an out-and-out number 10. And every coach has always wanted to play Mason Mount. He's very technically astute, tactically sound, works very hard off the ball. His work ethic is brilliant, and press really high. He's very suited to a Ten Hag team. I think it's a good piece of business.
I think we touched on Mason earlier. I think he makes United stronger joining them, Chelsea weaker leaving, is how I would sum that up. Can Chelsea win the Premier League next season? Now, do we mean 23, 24, 24, 25? Yeah.
I mean, I'll get this clipped up and sent to me in a day, but I don't think they will win the Premier League. I mean, if they do, it'll be an incredible job from Pochettino. But I would be surprised if Pochettino is going in there, having his barbecue food and saying that we'll be winning the Premier League.
Yeah, I mean, I think the top 4 for me are going to be...
If they made top 4, I think it'd be a very good season for Chelsea.
Yeah, but the contender, we've got City, Arsenal, United, Liverpool, Chelsea.
Liverpool came strong again, didn't they?
Yeah.
They overcame that blip. So
Villa going to be
Brighton,
good again next season.
Spurs,
Well, Villa and Brighton will be in Europe,
Newcastle,
which is going to be quite tough for them.
Newcastle,
They're going to be stretched by being in Europe. Newcastle we haven't seen in Europe yet either, with a smallish squad. So those 3 might find it a little bit harder. Tottenham aren't in Europe, which is generally... Conte had that luxury, didn't he?
Yeah.
Season he won the league at Chelsea, so I'm not saying Spurs will, but that will help.